Yes, that's what's going to happen today. Okay? Andy, are you shouting yes?
Yes, I am.
Yes, there you go.
Thank you very much. So let's just say a big thank you to Esther first of all for getting us all going this morning. Okay, so I should introduce myself, then I'm going to see who's in the room. I'm Andy Street, I'm Mayor of the West Midlands, as you might have seen. The Ugly Mug who appears on the telly locally some nights of the week. And I'm a Brummie. That's perhaps the most important thing to say to kick off. My parents and grandparents on one side came from Nechells, part of the city in the north, and the other side of the family were from Borsall Heath. So you know, those of you who know Bromwell, that if you cut me, I've got Brummie blood right through me, all the generations. And my story is how I was at school here, like you are, 13 or 14, and ended up being Mayor of the Midlands, and we'll talk a bit about that. I should say who's in the room, first of all. So have we got people from Turbs Green in the room, first of all? Yes, lovely, lots there. And you're from St Thomas Aquinas, aren't you? Those in the red, and obviously some from Hillcrest. Yes, lovely. Any other school that I haven't called out that I don't know about? No, well that's brilliant. 3 schools across the south of the city. Thank you. So what Esther asked me to do, and it's slightly embarrassing talking about myself, but I will do what she says because she's quite bossy, as you probably worked out. So I will obey what she said. She said, talk a bit about how you were at 13, 14, and where your sort of story starts, and then draw out any moments that you think are important to these points about confidence, assertiveness, and resilience. And I do think resilience is an incredibly important word, as I will say. And I'll pick up what Esther said about when you get knocked back, that's actually the time you bounce back even stronger than when the knock occurs. So 13, 14, it's terrible thinking about that. I was basically pretty lazy, pretty unmotivated, wasn't very interested in my schoolwork at all. I'm sure you all do it. You were given homework, I never did it. It was always lost on the bus or the dog had eaten it, and you were always making those excuses to teachers. And I always remember after the long school holidays and you'd done no work at all, and you were doing those things on the last night before you went back. So I suppose it'd be fair to say I was a pretty average 13-year-old. I was more interested in spending the time in the park with my mates or things I loved. I did a bit of sport when I was your sort of age. I loved swimming and I loved playing badminton. I ended up playing for the county, and that's what really took all my energy. And I wasn't interested in school, and if you'd said to me, what will you do as a career? I probably didn't know. Occasionally I might have thought I wanted to drive a train, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do. But you know what? That's okay when you're 13 or 14. Because my story is about how one teacher changed me from being that lazy, not very interested student to someone who suddenly was interested, wanted to do their work and get some exams. And it was when I was 16, and we started learning at my school a new subject, as it was called at the beginning of the 80s, called economics and sort of current affairs and politics. And we had this brilliant teacher. He was from Sheffield, and he was not a lot older than me, frankly. I was 16, he was probably about 25. And he just inspired me. And with me, it was like a switch being clicked from totally disinterested in school to suddenly wanting to really, really do my work. And I always say I am so grateful, looking back, to the teacher who changed people's lives because they get you interested. So my first tip would be find the thing at school that genuinely interests you. Don't worry what subjects you've been told you've got to do. But when you think about what you want to specialise in, and you'll all be facing those questions coming up, think of not what you're good at, but think about what you're genuinely inspired, interested in, because it will honestly get the best out of you going forward. I was lucky enough on the back of that to go off to university, but then I want to tell you about my first 2 setbacks, because this, I think, honestly, is where you show resilience and you learn to bounce back. I went to university, did okay, but then I wanted to find a job. And the first job I applied for, or the one I was certain I was going to get, was to come back to Birmingham and join the City Council Social Services Department. And I'll explain why a bit later on. But I was all up for doing it. And I got this letter about 6 weeks before I was due to start there. And it said, sorry Andy, we've run out of money. The cuts. It was even so in the mid-80s, the cuts. And so I suddenly didn't have the job that I always expected to go to. And you think, you dig deep and you think, what am I going to do? The plan isn't going to work out. So then I applied I thought, well, I'll go and work in retail. That gives you early training. So I applied first of all to Marks and Spencer's. They were the best retailer at the time. They turned me down as well. So you think, what are you going to do? I've been turned down everywhere I go. But you sort of learn somewhere deep inside you, there is some confidence. And I ended up, and the story's the same really, I ended up then going to work for John Lewis. And the reason I chose John Lewis is exactly the same as my economics teacher. The people who were doing the recruiting were interesting, different. You might even have said they were slightly mad, slightly bonkers. But it was those personalities that attracted me. They were much more interesting than the stale people doing recruitment. So the lesson I drew out again was about inspiring people, people you're interested in will motivate you. So I started in John Lewis, and just as Esther said about her story, you start at the bottom, but you work through. So I started on the till, on the shop floor. It's a shop in London called Brent Cross, and that first Christmas I remember very well. I was there polishing the shelves, taking the money, and you know, friends of mine from university had gone on to do clever things in the city of London, making money, and I was there polishing my shelves. And I thought, one day, I'll show you, I'll come through this. And I worked in John Lewis for 30 years, starting at the bottom as a trainee, and I ended up after 20 of those 30 years being the boss, being the CEO, ran John Lewis all across the country. And in that time, of course, we were lucky enough to sign the deal to open in the city centre here, and one of my proudest days was bringing John Lewis, the company I then led for about 7 years, to come back to my home city. So you can do great things if you get a job like that. But perhaps the lesson to draw out is when in those 30 years did I learn the most? Because in any career, it doesn't all go perfectly to plan. And the answer is, you learn the most when things go wrong. So I'll just tell you my little story. It's a work story, but you'll relate to it about taking advantage of the setbacks. So I was very chuffed when I got my first director job in John Lewis. And I was responsible for the supply of goods, you know, all the distribution, make sure the shops were fully stocked. And I was quite cocky, thought I'll change the world, show people how they should be done. But that first Christmas I was doing that, and I was in this supply chain role. We had a complete sort of meltdown of our distribution centres. And our shops had no stock in them. And that's not clever, running up to Christmas when you've suddenly got nothing to sell on the shelves. It's not good for a shop. And I thought, I'm going to be sacked. I'm going to be sacked. I'm going to be chucked out. It's all going to end in tears. But that didn't happen, because the guy who was then in charge said to me, Andy, that's the best thing that could have happened to you, because you will learn far more from something that goes wrong in business than something that always goes right. So my lesson is, if you get a setback, really think about it. What's it telling you? What can you learn from it? Because actually, that's the kindest thing of all. Now, last thought I wanted to put you is about confidence and confidence. Now, where does confidence come from? You're probably thinking, how on earth do you get this magical thing of confidence? It's just sort of, you can't see it, you can't touch it. Where does it come from? So I thought I'd tell you my story. And actually, it's got a connection to Turbs Green School. That's why I wanted to know who was in the room. You'll probably do things outside school that you're interested in. So some of you will do, I don't know, some of you do sports, some of you might do music, some of you might do, I don't know, drama, or something. But it's those things that you do outside school will be your first opportunities for confidence. And when I was 16, I got involved in a charity in Birmingham, and it was called Adventure Camps. It doesn't really matter what its name was, but it was called Adventure Camps, and its mission was to run holiday camps for kids from the city who wouldn't have a chance to go on a holiday at all. Lots of them were, perhaps, as Esther talked about, maybe living in care, maybe with the social services. Some of them were with the police, to be honest, so they were quite challenging children from across the city. And the very first time I did that, I was just 16 years old. Didn't know what I was doing, but that experience gave me more confidence than anything else. And by the time I was 18, I was actually in charge of the holiday, and we had 60 people for a week, 40 youngsters, aged about your age actually. They were 14 to 16 years old, boys and girls, you can imagine what they were interested in, and there were 20 helpers. And I was in charge of this, aged 18. So that sort of notion of having an opportunity outside of school or work to do something different and grow your confidence is something that I would suggest to anybody. It doesn't have to be big like that. It might just be a very small thing that you do, but just to be able to test what you're doing. And you know, for 22 years I ran those holidays for kids from Birmingham, and I learned more on those holidays than I ever learned anywhere else in life. And the reason I mentioned Turch Green, the woman who ran those holidays with me for 20 years, who's still a very good friend of mine, went to Turch Green School, and she's an old girl at that school as well. She's now a social worker in Warsaw, so she understood all of that. I did other things, and we worked together in that way for 20 years on that project. But I just mention it because it's interesting when I look back as to where I got my own experience that gave me that confidence and resilience. And I'm sure you can work out that in 20 years with 60 people under canvas in Wales, lots of things went wrong, and we had lots of occasions where we had to learn some resilience. And then, obviously, bringing it right up to date, about 3 years ago now, I decided to leave John Lewis. I'd done all that. That was great. I'd had my time, and I just put myself forward to be mayor of this region, and we had the election in May 17, and I just won. But the reason I've finished with that is now I find myself on the telly, standing here doing debates, whatever, and if you'd asked me at 13 what would be the most terrifying thing for me, it would be to have to stand up and give a public speech. I'd have hated it. I'd have run, I'd have probably hid. But now I do it every sort of day, and you reflect on how you get your moments, and I've tried to describe some of them, that give you that confidence and resilience as you go through life. So hopefully my story might be of some interest, some relevance to somebody in the room. If it is, it's been a good Saturday morning. But I did just want to finish by saying once again a huge thank you to the team from Chloe Can, because it's a brilliant organisation and it's all there at your disposal today. So seize whatever you can and enjoy your day. Thank you very much indeed.
I'm going to say a special thank you to Andy, and these are people who succeed in life, are people who are invariably busy people, and despite asking them to do something else, and most people would have said, no, I'm busy, I can't, I've got a full schedule today, Andy said to me, quick as a flash, after I texted him, Esther, I'll be there, I'll make sure I fit it in to my day, and I will do that extra thing to help somebody out, because I know how that helped me out as I was growing up, and I'm going to do that now. So, I know you've got loads to do, but he squeezed us in as well, and I think that in life goes a long way. Those people who go that little bit further, like the teachers who are here today, like the people who are here today, that little bit further, and I'll put that down if there's a single word for there. It also comes under kindness. Understanding that somebody's shown you kindness in your life, and then you'll want to repay it later on. So Andy, a huge thank you. And what you said there made total sense.
Hallelujah.
It did to me. And I hope we're all, throughout the day, everybody's little stories is possibly going to just add a little bit in. And you might think, what does that mean? But maybe in years or weeks or whatever it is, you'll hold it there in the back of your head and says, I now know what that meant. It made sense. So Andy, a huge thank you.